And this does not include the expanded surveillance under a 2002 presidential order. The New York Times reported that order allows the agency to totally bypass the minimization rule without even using the loophole. The Times says in the last 4 years, the NSA has monitored thousands of people in the U.S. without any court supervision, and possibly without even the paper trail left by minimization. This context makes those small dishes at Sugar Grove more important. As you might expect, the NSA gives few specifics about Sugar Grove's mission and has declined to comment for this story in spite of repeated requests. But in recent years, NSA officials have made efforts to improve public communications, and an agency-wide plan from 2000, declassified last year, suggests the small dishes might be part of the NSA's vision of its role in the future. According to Transition 2001, the NSA wants to keep a strong permanent presence on the global telecommunications infrastructure where protected American communications and targeted adversary communications will coexist. It also says the agency must live on the network and should rethink how it handles Fourth Amendment privacy protections. Some people contend that given today's technology, our communications are vulnerable with or without facilities like Sugar Grove. Attorney David Barnett with the Charleston law firm Jackson & Kelly specializes in communications law. He says he recommends that his clients always assume their messages are public.
Is that once you place something out into the sea of electronic commerce, you have lost control over it. And because we are placing communications out into the internet world, into the ether world, because we are sending out signals which are receivable by satellites, because we're sending out things that, that basically we lose control over in the form of radiation, you can't then assume that there aren't people who would, spend the time, money, and resources to try and intercept those communications.
He cites recent news stories as examples.
Recently, there's a California cell phone provider, Singular, which has a particular type of telephone that allows you to store pictures on. And we've seen the situation of Paris Hilton and the Limp Bizkit lead singer, where they've had their cell phones hacked, they've had their lists of telephone numbers and pictures taken off their cell phone. And again, we're not talking about something that requires a tremendous degree of technological skill to do this. We're talking about someone who is willing to break the law and has basic computer knowledge and has a whole lot of time on their hands.
Barnett says people should fear each other more than the government. He says authorities are just not that interested in looking at garden variety secrets amid the huge wash of data moving through the air.
If we're not engaging in inappropriate acts in the concept of being a terrorist or something like that, there's really no reason why the government would have interest in our own internal communications. I mean, it just simply, they have enough to worry about kind of situation rather than trying to track whether or not, Bob and Jane are having an affair in Charleston, West Virginia.
But such trust the government arguments are not much comfort to Bamford. He says if the NSA decided to use the dishes at Sugar Grove to target someone, for whatever reason, there would be no place to hide. And he says since 9/11, the political climate has not been good for civil liberties.
So you have this problem with this agency that has that capability, and if there's enough fear-mongering that goes on in the country, which is what's been going on, I mean, there's no question that there's enormous amounts of fear-mongering, you'll get people that will say it's okay, let the NSA do whatever it wants to, and I think that's a very dangerous situation when you.
In general, communications lawyer Barnett says most of the changes made since 9/11 should make Americans feel more secure.
I think that since 9/11, probably the concern that some civil libertarians have is that once you have the ability to share information, there may be sort of a creeping desire on the part of those with the ability to gather more information and pass that information along. I frankly don't think that should be a significant concern to the ordinary person. There is simply no reason why the government's interested in the fact that you may or may not be doing something that you shouldn't be doing or don't want the public at large to know about.
But not everyone is reassured. Since we spoke to him in the spring of 2005, Bamford has joined a lawsuit against the NSA over its domestic spying. He spoke to NPR's Michelle Norris on All Things Considered after the lawsuit was filed.
Do you believe that the NSA actually listened to some of your phone calls or monitored your emails?
I think it's possible. The problem is nobody knows, because the one firewall that previously existed between the NSA and the American public and me, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, has been removed. There are key aspects that would indicate that maybe in their vacuum cleaner approach to eavesdropping that our communications were picked up or even targeted, for all we know, since now that the court is being gone around, that they could be eavesdropping on us very well in the United States, and there's no check and balance.
He says the agency seems to be reverting to the abuses it committed before 1978, drifting into more and more illegal surveillance of innocent people.
If they have that capability there, one day or another, maybe not today or maybe not tomorrow, but the next day, they're going to use that technique. So the idea is to keep it from them in the first place. I mean, there has to be some level beyond which the government becomes the kind of government that we were fighting against in the old days against communism, where we were complaining because there was never any privacy in the Soviet Union. They could do anything they want, and the KGB this and the KGB that. I mean, what good is it if we end up becoming just like that?
He sees an especially troubling technique showing up in the NSA's toolbox. It's what's known as data mining, sifting through electronic databases to look for patterns and connections. Private firms like LexisNexis and ChoicePoint operate and maintain most of these databases, so Bamford says they're not restricted by the rules that are supposed to keep government agencies in check.
Because you bought a book at Barnes & Noble one day about microbiology, and another day you bought a book about problems in the Middle East, and another day you bought a book dealing with construction of armaments or something like that. All of a sudden you're a terrorism suspect, and you may be eavesdropped on, surveilled, or arrested or whatever.
Ultimately, Bamford says the political climate will determine how the NSA utilizes facilities like Sugar Grove.
Directors of NSA almost never testify in public before Congress. You count on one hand, with fingers left over, the number of times it's happened. Well, one of the times he testified recently after the September 11th hearings, he basically made a plea. He said to the people in Congress, he said, "You got to make that decision on where you want to draw the line. How close you want to draw it. We can't make that decision. It's you that make that decision." It's a very useful agency. I'm very much in favor of NSA. I think it's a great agency. But it could be abused. It was abused in the past, and it could be abused in the future.
As we noted earlier, this month a federal appeals court in Cincinnati upheld the constitutionality of the domestic surveillance program. This is the same lawsuit in which James Bamford and the ACLU are plaintiffs. It was a 2-to-1 decision. The ACLU says it may seek a hearing before a larger panel of appeals court judges or ask the U.S. Supreme Court to consider the case. You can go to our website to read the appeals court ruling. There are similar cases pending before the Federal Appeals Court in San Francisco. This has been your Outlook. I'm Beth Voorhees.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.